Hello, my friends. Welcome to Storyline History. I hope you are having a peaceful day. Today, I want to tell you the story of a woman who changed history. Her name was Cleopatra. For more than 2,000 years, people have talked about her. Some people remember her as the most beautiful queen in the ancient world. Others remember her because of Julius Caesar. Many know her because of Antony. But very few people know who Cleopatra really was. Was she simply a beautiful queen, or was she one of the greatest political minds of the ancient world? Imagine living in a palace where every smile could hide a secret. Imagine sitting on a golden throne while your own family planned to destroy you. Imagine ruling a kingdom that the most powerful empire on earth wanted to control. That was Cleopatra's life. It was a life filled with danger. It was a life filled with impossible choices. Every decision could save her kingdom, or destroy it forever. This is not only the story of a queen, it is the story of ambition. It is the story of intelligence. It is the story of survival, and before it came to an end, it changed the future of Egypt forever. If you enjoy discovering history through simple English stories, please subscribe to Storyline History. Now, let us travel back more than 2,000 years. Let us visit one of the greatest cities the ancient world had ever seen. A city called Alexandria. Cleopatra was born in the year 69 BC. She was born inside the royal palace of Alexandria. Alexandria was unlike any other city. It stood beside the Mediterranean Sea. Its harbor was always full of ships. Merchants arrived from distant lands. Scholars came to share new ideas. Travelers filled its busy streets. The city was rich. The city was beautiful. It was also one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. Its famous library held thousands of books. People believed that knowledge could change the world. And in many ways, it did. This was the world where Cleopatra opened her eyes for the very first time. But there was something unusual about her family. They ruled Egypt, yet they were not Egyptian. Their ancestors had come from Greece many generations before. For nearly 300 years, they had ruled the land of the pharaohs. Most people accepted their rule, others did not. Behind the palace walls, power was everything, trust was rare. Even brothers and sisters became enemies. The royal family lived surrounded by wealth, but they also lived surrounded by fear. And before Cleopatra became queen, she would learn a lesson that almost every ruler learned too late. Sometimes, the greatest danger does not come from outside the kingdom. It comes from inside your own family. In the next part, a young princess will begin her education. She will learn languages. She will study science. She will discover politics. And while she is preparing to rule, a storm is already beginning to gather over Egypt. When Cleopatra was still a child, she was very different from the other children in the palace. She loved asking questions. She wanted to understand everything around her. She listened carefully. She watched people closely. She learned from every conversation. Most royal children spent their days enjoying a life of luxury. Cleopatra spent much of her time learning. She believed that knowledge was power, and one day, that knowledge would save her life. Years passed. Cleopatra was no longer a child. She had grown into a confident young woman. She had studied history. She had mastered several languages. She understood diplomacy. She understood politics, and she knew that Egypt was changing. The kingdom was no longer as strong as it had once been. Its economy was struggling. Its people faced difficult times beyond Egypt's borders. Rome continued to grow stronger. Its armies conquered new lands. Its influence spread across the Mediterranean. Everyone knew that Rome was becoming the greatest power of the age. Then, everything changed. In 51 BC, King Ptolemy XIII died. Cleopatra was 18 years old. The crown now belonged to her. It was the moment she had prepared for throughout her life. But there was a problem. According to the royal tradition, she had to rule alongside her younger brother. His name was Ptolemy III. He was only a boy, on paper. They shared equal power. In reality, things were very different. Cleopatra wanted to strengthen Egypt. She wanted to make wise decisions. She wanted to protect her kingdom. But powerful advisors surrounded the young king. They cared little about Egypt. They cared about their own influence. A capable queen stood in their way. Slowly, they began turning the court against her. Rumors spread through the palace. Old friends became distant. Trusted allies disappeared. Every day became more dangerous. Cleopatra realized that wearing a crown did not guarantee safety. Sometimes, a throne could become the most dangerous place in the kingdom. She refused to give up, but her enemies were already making their next move. Soon, she would be forced to leave the city she called home, and from exile, she would begin planning the fight that could decide the future of Egypt forever. She studied reading, she studied writing, she studied history, she studied mathematics, she studied philosophy, she studied astronomy. She wanted to understand how kingdoms became powerful. She wanted to understand why great rulers failed. But there was one thing that made Cleopatra truly different. She wanted to speak to her people. At that time, most members of her family spoke only Greek. They ruled Egypt, but many of them never learned the Egyptian language. Cleopatra made a different choice. She learned Egyptian, then she learned other languages. Soon, she could speak with merchants, she could speak with soldiers, she could speak with ambassadors from distant kingdoms. People admired her intelligence. They admired her memory. They admired the confidence of the young princess. But intelligence alone could not protect anyone inside the royal palace. Part 4. A desperate plan. Cleopatra had lost her throne, but she had not lost her courage. She crossed the eastern border into Syria. There, she found loyal supporters. She spoke with old friends. She met experienced soldiers. She promised them a better future. Little by little, a small army began to gather. Cleopatra was preparing to return. She believed Egypt was still her home. She believed its people deserved a better future. But while she was making her plans, another great conflict was changing the ancient world. Far to the north, Rome was at war with itself. Two powerful leaders were fighting for control. One was Pompey, the other was Julius Caesar. Both wanted to rule Rome. Both believed they would win. The war ended with a great battle. Caesar was victorious. Pompey escaped. He sailed toward Egypt. He hoped to find protection there instead. He found betrayal. The advisors around King Ptolemy XIII believed they could earn Caesar's favor. They ordered Pompey to be killed. It was a decision they would soon regret. A few days later, Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria. He expected to settle Egypt's growing conflict. Instead, he was presented with the head of Pompey. Caesar was shocked. He did not celebrate. He believed a Roman leader deserved honor, even in defeat. At that moment, everything changed. Caesar decided to remain in Egypt. He would personally settle the dispute over the Egyptian throne. When Cleopatra heard the news, she saw a new opportunity. If she could speak with Caesar, she might win back her kingdom. But reaching him would not be easy. Her enemies controlled Alexandria. The palace was heavily guarded. If she was recognized, she would almost certainly be captured. Most people would have abandoned the idea. Most people would have waited. Cleopatra chose a different path. She decided to risk everything because she believed. Some opportunities come only once in a lifetime, and before another day had passed, she began one of the boldest journeys in history. Her next meeting would change the future of Egypt forever. Cleopatra was ready. She had gathered loyal supporters. She had a plan, but she knew one thing. An army alone would not save Egypt. She needed a powerful ally. At the same time, Rome was changing. The civil war was over. Julius Caesar had defeated his greatest rival. His name was Pompey. After the battle, Pompey escaped. He sailed across the Mediterranean. He hoped Egypt would protect him. Instead, he was betrayed. The advisors around King Ptolemy XIII believed they could impress Caesar. They ordered Pompey to be killed. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria, they presented him with Pompey's severed head. They expected praise. Instead, Caesar was disappointed. Pompey had been his enemy, but he had also been a Roman leader. He believed the murder was dishonorable. Now, Caesar decided to remain in Egypt. He wanted to settle the dispute between Cleopatra and her brother. When Cleopatra heard the news, she realized this was her chance. If she could speak to Caesar, she might win back her throne. But there was one problem. Her enemies controlled Alexandria. Every gate was guarded. Every street was watched. If the soldiers recognized her, she would be arrested immediately. Most people would have given up. Cleopatra did not. She trusted only one loyal friend. His name was Apollodorus. Together, they sailed into Alexandria under the cover of darkness. The city was quiet, but danger was everywhere. When they reached the palace, Apollodorus carried a large bundle inside. The guards believed it was a gift for Caesar. They never imagined. The future queen of Egypt was hidden inside. The bundle was carried into Caesar's private room. A few moments later, it was carefully opened. Cleopatra stepped out. She stood before the most powerful man in Rome, calm, confident, fearless. Caesar looked at the young queen with surprise. No one had ever entered his palace in such a daring way. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Cleopatra began to speak. She explained how she had lost her throne. She explained how powerful advisors had taken control of her young brother. She asked Caesar to judge the dispute fairly. Caesar listened carefully. He was impressed by her intelligence. He admired her courage. He saw that she was far more than a beautiful queen. That single meeting changed both of their lives. and it changed the future of Egypt forever. In the next part, Caesar makes a bold decision. The palace becomes a battlefield, and Cleopatra must fight for the crown she has just begun to reclaim. Caesar had made his decision. He declared that Cleopatra and her brother should rule Egypt together. It was the arrangement their father had wanted. To Caesar, it seemed fair, but not everyone agreed. The advisors around Ptolemy the Thegned were furious. They had worked hard to remove Cleopatra. Now, she was back inside the palace, and she had the support of Rome's greatest general. They refused to accept it. Soon, their soldiers surrounded the royal palace. The streets of Alexandria filled with armed men. The city held its breath. War had arrived. Caesar had only a small force of Roman soldiers. They were experienced. They were disciplined, but they were greatly outnumbered. Cleopatra stayed beside him. She knew there was no safe escape. If the palace fell, her dream would end. The fighting began. Arrows filled the sky. Swords clashed in the narrow streets. Smoke rose above the city. The sound of battle echoed through Alexandria. Day after day, neither side gave up. Then the fighting reached the harbor. Caesar knew the Egyptian fleet could trap his soldiers. He acted quickly. His men set fire to several ships. The flames spread across the water. Soon, much of the harbor was burning. The fire grew beyond anyone's control. Nearby buildings were damaged. For centuries, people have wondered whether part of the famous Library of Alexandria was also affected. The ancient sources do not give a complete answer. But the fire became one of the most remembered moments of the war. Inside the palace, food became scarce. Fresh water was difficult to find. Every sunrise brought another battle. Every sunset brought more uncertainty. Even Caesar could not be sure of victory. Still, he refused to surrender. He sent messages to Roman commanders. He asked for reinforcements. Weeks passed. Then ships appeared on the horizon. Roman soldiers had arrived. At last, Caesar marched out to face the Egyptian army. The final battle took place near the Nile. The fighting was fierce. Neither army wanted to retreat. Then King Ptolemy the Thegned tried to escape. He climbed into a small boat. The river was crowded. The boat overturned. The young king disappeared beneath the water. He was never seen alive again. With his death, the war came to an end. Cleopatra had won. She entered Alexandria once more, not as an exiled princess, but as the queen of Egypt. Yet she understood something important. Winning the throne was only the beginning. Keeping it would be an even greater challenge. The war was over, at last. Peace returned to Alexandria. The city slowly began to recover. Its people returned to their homes. Its markets became busy once again. But Cleopatra knew peace could not last forever. Rome was still watching Egypt. Its leaders still wanted influence over the kingdom. Cleopatra understood that Egypt needed a strong ally. For now, that ally was Julius Caesar. The two rulers spent many months together. They spoke about politics, they spoke about trade, they spoke about the future of Egypt. Caesar admired Cleopatra's intelligence. She was calm, she was confident, she understood how to lead. Soon, their friendship became something more. Not long afterward, Cleopatra gave birth to a son. She named him Ptolemy 15th. But most people knew him by another name, Caesarion. It meant Little Caesar. Cleopatra believed he would one day rule Egypt. She hoped he would continue her family's dynasty. A short time later, Cleopatra traveled to Rome. It was her first visit to the heart of the Roman Republic. The city was enormous. Its streets were crowded. Its temples were magnificent. Its power reached across the Mediterranean. Many Romans were eager to see the famous Queen of Egypt. Some welcomed her, others did not. Many senators viewed her with suspicion. They believed Caesar was becoming too powerful. Some even feared that he wanted to become a king. That idea frightened many Romans. For centuries, Rome had rejected kings. Its people believed no one should hold unlimited power. But Caesar's influence continued to grow. He was given more authority than ever before. His supporters celebrated him. His enemies became increasingly nervous. Behind closed doors, a secret plan was beginning to take shape. Several senators believed there was only one way to stop Caesar. They decided he had to die. Cleopatra knew nothing about the plot. She continued living quietly in Rome. She had no idea that history was about to change once again. And when the moment finally arrived, nothing would ever be the same. In the next part, Julius Caesar is assassinated, Cleopatra escapes Rome, and a new Roman leader enters her life. His name is Mark Antony. Life in Rome continued, but beneath the surface, something was changing. Julius Caesar had become the most powerful man in the Republic. He had won great victories. He had defeated his enemies. The people admired him. His soldiers remained loyal. Many believed he was the greatest leader Rome had ever known. But not everyone shared that opinion. Some senators were afraid. They believed Caesar had too much power. They feared the Republic was coming to an end. They whispered in secret. They met behind closed doors. Slowly, a dangerous plan began to take shape. They decided there was only one way to stop Caesar. On the morning of March 15th, 44 BC, Caesar walked toward the Senate House. It seemed like an ordinary day. He greeted friends. He spoke with officials. He had no idea what was waiting for him. As he entered the building, the senators gathered around him. For a brief moment, everything was quiet. Then one man pulled out a knife. Another quickly followed. Within seconds, more blades appeared. Caesar tried to defend himself, but he was surrounded. The attack was over almost as quickly as it had begun. The most powerful man in Rome lay dead on the floor of the Senate. News spread through the city. Some people were shocked, others celebrated. Many simply feared what would happen next. Rome was filled with confusion. No one knew who would take control. When Cleopatra heard the news, she understood the danger immediately. Her greatest ally was gone, without Caesar. She no longer had powerful protection in Rome. She knew staying there would be too dangerous. Without wasting time, she gathered her young son. She prepared her ships, and she sailed back to Egypt once again. She found herself standing alone, but history was not finished with her, far away in Rome. 3 powerful men were preparing to divide the Republic. One of them was a brilliant young politician. Another was a respected military commander. His name was Mark Antony. Very soon, Their paths would cross, and together, they would begin one of the most famous partnerships in history. But their greatest battle was still waiting. Cleopatra had returned to Egypt. But she knew the future of her kingdom was uncertain. Rome was changing once again after Caesar's death. Three powerful men shared control of the Roman Republic. One of them was Mark Antony. He was a brilliant general. He had fought beside Julius Caesar. He was respected by his soldiers. He was admired by many Romans. Soon, he sent a message to Cleopatra. He wanted to meet the Queen of Egypt. The meeting took place in the city of Tarsus. Cleopatra knew this meeting could decide the future of her kingdom. She wanted to make an unforgettable first impression. So she arrived on a magnificent royal barge. Its sails were bright. Its decorations were covered in gold. Soft music echoed across the river. The air was filled with sweet perfume. People gathered along the shore. They watched in amazement. Even Mark Antony was impressed. The meeting lasted for hours. They spoke about politics. They spoke about Rome. They spoke about Egypt. Before long, their friendship became a close partnership. Later, they fell in love. Together, they dreamed of building a powerful future. Cleopatra gave birth to 3 children. For several years, everything seemed peaceful. Egypt became wealthy once again. Trade continued to grow. The queen remained popular among her people, but in Rome, a new rival was watching. His name was Octavian. He was Julius Caesar's adopted son. He wanted complete control of Rome. He knew Mark Antony stood in his way. So he began a campaign against him. He told the Roman people that Antony had forgotten Rome. He claimed that Cleopatra was controlling him. Many Romans believed these stories. Soon war became unavoidable. In 31 BC, the two sides met at the Battle of Actium. Hundreds of ships filled the sea. Thousands of soldiers prepared for battle. It became one of the greatest naval battles in history. For hours, neither side gained a clear advantage. Then Cleopatra's fleet turned away. Mark Antony followed her. Without their leaders, the rest of the fleet collapsed. Victory belonged to Octavian. Antony and Cleopatra escaped back to Egypt. But they both understood the truth. The end was near. 1 year later, Octavian entered Alexandria. The city could no longer resist. Mark Antony believed Cleopatra had died. Heartbroken, he took his own life. Soon afterward, Cleopatra learned that Octavian intended to take her to Rome. She refused to become a prisoner. She refused to live as a symbol of defeat. According to the ancient tradition, she chose to end her own life. She was only 39 years old with her death. The rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end. Egypt became a province of Rome. The last independent ruler of ancient Egypt was gone. But Cleopatra's story never disappeared. For more than 2,000 years, people have continued to remember her. Some remember her beauty. Others remember her love stories. But history remembers something greater. She was an intelligent ruler. She was a skilled diplomat. She spoke many languages. She faced impossible challenges, and she never stopped fighting for her kingdom. Perhaps that is the real reason her name still lives on today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you enjoy discovering history through simple English storytelling, Please subscribe to Storyline History. Until next time, take care and keep exploring the stories that shaped our world.